Hello, and welcome to Design Review. I'm Robert Haines, the founder of Engineering Your Life, and today my guest is Catlin O'Shaughnessy Coffrin. Cat, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. As much as I've gotten to read what you've been publishing, I've been looking forward to meeting you for quite some time, so I'm delighted. And I'll go ahead and introduce. So Kat is a strategy consultant and personal brand coach who helps accomplished leaders reclaim their voices and amplify their impact to the world. As a founder of Captivating Consulting, Kat advises executives at leading firms across a wide variety of industries and sectors, from healthcare and consulting to finance and agriculture. A writer, podcaster, and frequent speaker. We need to talk about that maybe. Kat has appeared in national outlets such as Chief, Fast Company, Forbes, Thrive Global, and Business Insider. And a headline from her website, captivatingco.com, says what she means to me here. Through a distinctive combination of strategic insight and a subversive commitment to bringing more individuality to the workplace, I help you rediscover who you've always been. That just hits me. So I'm delighted to have you here.
I am so excited to be here, and I feel like we're going to have a really hard time staying on any one thread here. So we're going to have to keep each other honest, but it's so much fun. And I'm sure anybody who listens to this, who has a website and has spent a lot of time thinking about content for their website, can appreciate how nice it is to get a reflection. Because as you said that, I'm like, oh, that is a good phrase. I should use that more.
It is, and I'm a little envious.
I love it.
I'm a little envious as I've tried to find out what summarizes what I do, but
it's not easy.
I find it really fascinating at how different our backgrounds are. Because, like, I'm an engineer turned life coach. You're, very involved. I mean, you were in DC, so we'll get to some history about what gets here, but how we ended up weaving through life to end up looking at life in such similar ways, I find particularly fascinating. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you'd like to have as kind of intro to Kat? We'll get to your project shortly.
No, I actually, this is not answering your question, but I want to say something else. I made a note as you were talking, because I love your point. We have had very different journeys, and we haven't even gone through an in-depth, side-by-side comparison of our paths. I think we overlap, like we both have a Seattle connection. We have a couple things that I know that we've discussed before, but what strikes me, just based on what you and I have batted around before getting onto this call today, and what you just said, and that comment you just made about how we could have such different journeys and feel like we're landing in a similar place now, even though we're at different, places in our own lives, right, and ages and whatever. I actually think it goes back a little bit. My hypothesis would be that the piece you just called out about returning to who we've always been. I think the answer is somewhere in there, because, we've talked a little bit about addiction and recovery, setting aside what type. Rock bottom is a term you used. It's something I've spent a lot of time in my childhood thinking about when my father was going through addiction. But I actually think the return to self is the central hypothesis of identity in the work that I do. And I wonder if that's part of what it is that we both had formative experiences that maybe we've reacted to in similar ways over time. So our lives haven't been the same, but here we find ourselves kind of overlapping in an interesting way. So isn't that idea of return to self? Like, I think there's something.
Yeah. And that is central to my journey. And it is central to the journey for my clients. So yeah, strong overlap that pulls the story together. And yeah, we'll have to keep returning to that as we go. This is just the beginning. We're just starting to have the chat. So yes, I think so. And I think that's a legit thing to do. In fact, I mean, even as an example, I went by nothing but Robert for the first 14 years of my life. I would take no nicknames of any kind, not Rob, Bob, Bobby, whatever, until.
Were you serious? Were you like a very serious kid and you're like, I'm Robert?
Do you really need to ask that? Yes, I was so serious a kid. I was an adult at the age of 7. So
I was too. I was very serious.
Not super surprised. And then my first girlfriend called me Rob when I was 14. And I'm like, oh, I guess I need to be Rob to be cool. And for 40 years, I was Rob. I am published in international metrology magazines as Rob Haines. And in my process, in my recovery in the last 7 years, I have, through some reflection and therapy, quite a bit of that, returned to Robert.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So just as an example, graphic example of what you're talking about. And that through some people, there's people that only have ever known me as Robert.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to veer to the side for a second again. You did live in Seattle, right? Don't you have a Seattle connection?
Yeah. My corporate headquarters of the company I worked for 25 years is in Everett. I'm up in Seattle often. I have friends up there. I'm up there a couple times a year.
I am too. Yeah. Okay. And my whole family's there. That's where I grew up. But one of my very best friends lives in Seattle, and we're both big Brandy Carlisle fans. She's a big hometown, celebrity now. She's been at it for 20 plus years, but she's really exploded recently. She just came out with a new album, and it's called Returning to Myself. And the whole premise, and that's the main song, so you got to go look it up. It's like going through my head as you're talking, but the whole premise of the album is that she went from being this kind of like just, musician for musician's sake, probably 30 years ago when I was still living in Seattle and was like around, but her star really rose in the last couple of years. She's won Grammys and suddenly is on everybody's radar and selling out arenas and collaborating with like Elton John, did a whole album with him, all these big names, and then sort of woke up one day and felt like she'd lost herself. And then went, I want to say like to upstate New York or somewhere with like the people closest to her and kind of put this album together, and it just came out. And my best friend, just a brag moment, lives in West Seattle and went to Easy Street Records where they had a little release party for it, like teeny tiny space, totally Brandy Carlisle, to go do that. And ended up hanging out with her all night. So I got all these pictures of them together.
Oh my
gosh. Had a little geek moment. But you have to go listen to it because I feel like there's such a universality, is the point that I'm making, to what we're talking about that can unite us, right? At whatever age in our lives we find ourselves doing that. I expect I'll continue returning to myself at different phases over time. I'm in a big phase of that right now, but I can really relate to what you're saying. And that the name thing, 40 years going by Rob. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And it turns out that is a part of me. And integration is a huge theme in all of that. In fact, now as a Jungian life coach, the individuation process is a huge, powerful thing of bringing people to a place of healing and choice about how they approach life, that the way that we go through life that we thought was who we were isn't actually who we were. It's a persona. It's a mask, something that we wear to the world to show who we think we are or who we want to be seen as. And finding out who we really are. Yeah, it's I think this is a really powerful theme that may be woven throughout here. So a delight. Oh yeah, we already got the wonderful surprise.
Our thesis. I love it.
We may very well. So okay. So this is design review. And no, this is all great. The surprises are probably the best part. So we're going to weave this around a project or passion that is meaningful to you. And we'll kind of like talk about your journey and stuff like that. And as we've discussed, there's a lot of things that we could choose to talk about. Have you chosen one?
I think given everything, I had a different one in mind, but I think given everything you're saying and the preamble to this conversation, I would like to talk a little bit about my own journey of returning to myself in my career and how I turned that into, a lot like you, helping others who have the same need through especially returning to writing and a love of literature. And I've been thinking a whole lot about this lately. So I've got a couple of fresh, kind of perspectives and insights that I haven't fully fleshed out. So we'll see where they go. But I think this idea of a return and how it's expressing itself, I've had such a strange year on that path, and it would be really fun to explore that with you.
I would love that. So return to self as writing. So that's where we're going to base this around. So as I alluded to earlier, my first question is going to be, what is your why? What is the problem that returning to writing is the solution or answer to? And I'll invite you to kind of reflect on what is it that got you on that path.
Oh, well, to me, those are two separate questions.
Oh, I realize that I was asking. I'll let you choose how you answer that.
The second one's going to be a lot longer. So why don't I start with the why? And I'm going to answer it more in terms of like the purpose of why I'm focused on this, not just for me. And then I will talk about what got me on the path, which is a much more personal sort of self-serving answer. The why is not that dissimilar from really where my work's been for the last 6 years since I got started on my own. You talked about the Jungian idea of identity and the mask, and I'm going to need to, I made a note because I'm going to need to go spend a little time with that. But one thing I talk a lot about is and examine and explore is the way that that mask, that other self, right, that we get so good at even convincing ourselves that that actually is who we are. We don't always like, it's so simplified to think that we're all aware of our mask and we're putting it on and we're not. Like it gets so conflated so quickly, and I have more to say on that. But especially when we get into the working world where most of us grow up, that mask is a collaborative design. And the world starts to tell us, we start as children so self-centered and so focused. And then over time, we start to take on more responsibilities. We start to conflate ourselves with our partners. We start to conflate ourselves with our children, with every responsibility, and then our job and our job identity. And so it kind of makes sense. But I always look at it as this like path where by the time you reach, say, the middle or the zenith or the peak of your career and your life, let's say 40s, early 40s. I'm 43, so I'm a little bit focused on that, but like ish, could go more or less, right? You have gotten so good. A big part of being successful in at least corporate America, but I would say the corporate world, is by fully integrating and internalizing, I should say, the external definition of what success looks like. And it's not that we've completely lost everything that was ours. It's usually come together, right? So it's like my career before I left corporate America 6 years ago, I loved what I did, and I'm still benefiting from a lot of that. And so that wasn't ostensibly the issue. I was being true to myself in a lot of ways. But what was really interesting through my writing journey, which I'll come back to, is it was in 2023 that I started to, for the first time, actually see. It was like, how you and I are both huge fans of therapy. We could do 5 hours on therapy. But this idea, sometimes in therapy, you'll walk away from a session with this tiny little nuanced insight. You'll be like, that's so interesting, but it's so specific and so nuanced. Only my therapist and I really care about that. Other days you walk away with like a smack you in the face, like between the eyes. Holy shit. Am I like, I'm sorry. Holy cow. I didn't know.
The language is okay on this podcast.
Okay. I don't want to be restricted in my language here. I'm just kidding. Other times are those moments where you're like, oh my God, that's such a bit, I can't believe I never knew that about myself. And for me, it was like, I did not realize I had done such a good job at internalizing that self that was given to me, that was co-created with the externalized expectations, validation, et cetera, that had helped me be successful over time. I didn't even see the difference between the two. And I had gotten so good at discounting my own real feelings that I didn't even see them or recognize them before I shoved them down. Does that make sense?
Oh, not only it makes sense, but you, I don't know. Do you feel like you're unique in that? Because to me, like that's the human condition. This is what happens to everybody.
Question. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that there's different, and maybe this is just where everybody is on their journey. Is life just one big journey of being one person and then returning to that person? I'm certainly not far enough on my path to know, but at this point, it certainly feels that way. And so to the why, and to the language you used at the beginning about subversively, I can't remember. I love that word subversive. I cannot take credit for that. My website designer, Caitlin Lang, came up with that word.
Oh, high five to Caitlin.
But subversively, yeah. Do you know her?
No,
awesome.
Yeah,
I
need to meet her.
She's pretty amazing. But this idea of kind of reintegrating individuality into corporate spaces, and as an extension of that from a content perspective, I like to challenge norms and expectations on things we talk about in professional spaces. That's something I really greatly enjoy. That's a lot of people. And I think that idea of pushing the boundaries of what we can talk about is a great way to at least start to acknowledge that, because consider myself I've been in therapy for a good chunk of my adult life. I'm an examiner. I always have been. Like I've always been a journal writer. Like these parts of me have not changed.
Yeah.
But even still, I was shocked to discover it wasn't until I did the Artist's Way for 3 months in January through March of 2023, and I was doing the morning pages every day, that I discovered if I had talked to you then, I would have been like, I'm a pretty upbeat person. And I am. I am an indefatigable optimist. Like I love the world. I see things through rose-colored glasses. Um, and yet my morning pages were like so dark. They were really angry and mostly mean to myself. And what shocked me was that I didn't know that. I didn't even know that that's what I was waking up with every day, because I was jumping over it so quickly that I didn't even allow myself to acknowledge and give grace to the existence of those feelings. So yes, I do think maybe that's part of the human condition. That's an interesting theory we'll have to continue to check in on and test. But I think everyone comes at it from different perspectives. And I think so much of my adoption of an externalized sort of mask and vision of who I need to be and identity over the years comes out of survival mode.
Yeah.
Maybe yours, I think a lot of us who come out of traumatic childhoods, et cetera, like I did it because I had to survive. So I didn't really have the luxury of sitting around actually acknowledging that I have a lot of angry, sad feelings that I wasn't focused on. So,
and that, well, all of that resonates, like every word, resonates with my experience. And I've spent a lot of time talking with other folks that are on their own healing journeys. And now that's what I do. Right. What I found is that, this is like the path we take in life often. Now, those of us that came from, chaotic, and, or, abusive or unhealthy, childhoods are a bit more prone to a path of suppressing feelings.
Yes.
And
we learned it early on.
And there's lots of ways. There's a lot of ways to suppress feelings. I was a workaholic for a while.
I did that.
Yep. I thought you might have had that one. I was codependent. So I would basically medicate by taking care of other people or managing their feelings so that I didn't have to think about mine. I ended up, love and romance was something that I also used, but, approval and validation was probably my top. And that drove me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And did you ever find that uncomfortable feeling? I remember seeing in myself years ago, before I even got onto this part of the journey that I'm on now, an insatiable need for validation and approval. Like it was like, people would be like, wow, you really killed it in that pitch. And I knew that I did. I wanted to hear it from them, but I just needed to hear it over and over and over again.
Oh, God. It is so nice to hear someone else admit that,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was like, I don't know what to do with this, but something's got to stop, because I can't keep sitting around begging people to be like, you did great, and that's when you start to realize, I would say the writing and the journey that I'm on right now, especially at this point, feels very much about this rehabbing my relationship with my intuition and my own self-worth, to the point that I don't need other people's validation anymore. That I got divorced this year. I am like getting into new relationships now. Like it's a real, I've only been in a 20-year relationship that I grew up in, and observing myself and seeing the difference in how you approach people at midlife, and can be honest and open about like what it is you're looking for and what you need from them. And where that fierce protectiveness that I find right now of wanting to keep my independence, my alone time in that relationship, because I'm not willing to sacrifice that,
Yes.
I'll let you know how that goes.
Oh yeah. Well, I had to learn this the hard. I've been married 3 times. So
you've got an extra.
I have like extra experience here, but meanwhile, it's the same lesson. And, I was externalizing through age, 54, right? I was seeking validation from my relationship, from my employer, from my friends, from my family. And I would often get a lot of it. And all it would take would be like one negative comment that might not have even been negative, but I interpreted it that way, to just like crush me. And so I would go on these highs and lows. I seriously, I thought I was bipolar for 35 years. It turns out I have ADHD, an addictive personality, and I'm a sensitive person.
That'll do it.
It did a number on me. But meanwhile, yeah, it's really interesting, and there's so much peace and stability and solidity and calm that comes from just knowing yourself
Oh yeah.
and being
I mean,
okay with you.
yeah. And don't you find I'm sort of in a place where I'm observing a lot about my relationships with just various people in my life, my interactions with people, and looking for what I'm looking for from them, and really listening to my nervous system and where it responds and reacts to people. Even just had coffee with a friend. I live in a small little town in Vermont, and found myself walking away from coffee the other day thinking, I don't feel safe around this person. She's not a bad person, but she's just so, we're in such different places where she's so overstimulated by her life and her work and everything that it's really triggering to me when I'm around her, and I can sense my nervous system versus me being like, I like this person, and I do, and I'll continue to be her friend. But having coffee with her is sort of a stressful experience for me at this point in my life, where I'm settling into more of a calm state. I'm coming out of a really hard period, and I'm in like kind of recovery now.
Yeah.
And she's like not in that same state, and recognizing and allowing that a lot of it's just a reaction to other people who maybe aren't in that place. And that's okay, right? But understanding that that's going to be a different kind of interaction, and then seeking out people who are able to be kind of a little bit calmer, and seeing how much more they have to offer in your interactions, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No.
I want to come back to this idea so that I can move on to part 2 of it. I'm remembering. I'm not going to let us lose track here. The idea of return. So this is something you're catching me. Literally, I was in a conversation about this just 2 days ago. In case anyone wonders what it's like to date me, this is going to be a little glimpse, because this actually came out of a conversation with someone that I just recently started seeing. The return to self. So when I think about my why, let me try to thread this needle. I do this work because once I went through my own kind of like mid-career identity crisis that spawned a whole bunch of other stuff in the last 6+ years that I've been on this part of my journey, I started to appreciate how, if this was so hard for me, and I found some models and frameworks to move myself through this, to help myself ground, and then also launch my business and all that, there must be other people who need it, yada, yada, yada. I launched my consultancy January 2020, unwittingly, just before the world shut down. And suddenly everyone's talking about identity crisis. Like, it was sort of a little bit of a lightning in a bottle moment.
Okay.
As you know, I do, therefore, about 50% of my work is what I call personal branding. It's one-on-one workshops, keynotes, things like that. I don't like the term personal branding because I think it's so reductionist and buzzwordy. But in business, there's not a lot of value to be gained from inventing new phrases and then forcing people to understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Personal branding's out there. They need it. There's already identified value, for better or worse. What I hate about everything that's out there under the guise of personal branding, and why I don't like being associated with it, is it tends to imply inauthenticity and invention.
Yeah.
And of course, looking, who do you want to be? Whereas my approach, as I think you know, is about a return and a reclaim.
Yeah.
I think that what ails us, this identity crisis stuff that probably is where in the Venn diagram of our work, where we tend to overlap, is an idea of re-anchoring people. So even if some people come to me, I'm not a career coach, but they're trying I used to work with USAID. So I'm surrounded by people who are finding themselves not only out of a job, but out of an industry.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking reality. They have some big existential questions. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, don't sit there and say, what do I need to change on my resume, or how do I write a cover letter? Take some time right now to reground yourself in who you've always been.
Yeah.
So that's where we overlap. Who have I always been? So now I'm going to go to the next part, my process. So when I was 16, I was in an AP English class at Issaquah High School outside of Seattle. Mr. Mitchell, amazing teacher who's since passed away. And we were doing the Transcendentalists. I think I came out of the womb ready to meet the Transcendentalists. Like, I was meant for that lesson unit. I feel like you probably too. And I will never forget, we had an entire essay that we were assigned to write just on the one sentence from his essay, Nature, that says, I become a transparent eyeball. And some of my friends are going to be like, I cannot believe she's mentioning this on a podcast. But I like loved that essay because it was just, I can't remember exactly where in the essay comes, but the image I have in my head is this idea of communing so much with nature that you are able to see everything without judgment. right on either side of your eye. Like you just can observe the world as it is. That is the highest form of transcendence, right? In this essay, we had to write a whole essay about it. I lived for that essay. I loved that essay. I talked about it all through senior year. I'd be like, it's kind of like a transparent eyeball. And I was like, stop with that eyeball. But like, it was so time. And I was always a writer. The summer before my senior year of high school, I actually went to a book camp. There's a couple colleges in the country that are great books curriculum. And the whole curriculum is designed on contemporary topics through the lens of great literature. So like you study math, but you're reading Euclid, Kierkegaard, whatever. And I went, it was a couple of weeks, and I was so into literature. It was how I discovered the world. It was so meaningful. If you met me in high school, I was probably going to be an English major. I had an analytical mind. I had like a love affair with William Butler Yeats. I would take his like poems to my favorite cafe in downtown Seattle. And it was like how I survived a really tough upbringing where I felt very abandoned. Found it in like these old white dudes, whatever. If only we'd have a more diverse literature. Imagine who else I might have met. Those were the guys that I got. Emerson. I got Yeats. And I remember the Federalist Papers. I read every single one. And I really communed. There's this William Butler Yeats poem called Vacillation. I did an entire essay on it, where there's this one stanza. It's a collection of different disparate pieces that he eventually wrote together into one piece. And it says, my 50th year had come and gone. Something like, there I sat at a London coffee shop with an open book and an empty pipe on the marble tabletop. And as upon the shop and street I gazed, my body of a sudden blazed, for it seemed so great my happiness that I was blessed and could bless. And I remember reading this essay, and I'm sitting in this cafe in Seattle, 16, 17 maybe. And I'm like, I know that feeling. Do you know that feeling when you are in such a calm state of reading and connecting through words that you have a physical reaction of like, you feel it's transcendence in a way. And his idea of his body was sudden blazed, and it seemed so great my happiness that I was blessed. You feel that, like that people say cup runneth over or whatever. And it was such a strange feeling to me at that moment, only having known one place, right? My family didn't travel. My dad was a cop. My mom was a teacher, like pretty modest blue collar, long Seattle history. That was all that I knew. And I'm sitting alone there, and all of a sudden I'm like connecting with some time out of place that I never could have known through this like description of human experience through words. And so I share that because I've been thinking a lot through some conversations I've been having this week about like, where did my initial love for words and literature come from? And this person I was talking to came back to me and said, how did you go from reading Emerson and loving William Butler Yeats to like the work that then the career you built doing strategy work? And going to school in DC, and I interned with the World Bank and the UN Foundation, and I traveled to Africa and like had not at all the career that I would have thought I would have had. And it was such an interesting question, because when I think about what I'm doing right now at 43, recently divorced, is returning to that person. So it makes sense that the words and the writing are a part of it. I've always been a writer, but probably around 22, I finished college at 21, put myself through school in DC, got a great scholarship, still owed a lot of money, got into international development, got the perfect job, and then set myself on this path and never took a day off. And when I think about that, I stopped writing. I have maybe 20 journals. I have a whole library. My family teases me, my kids and my ex-husband, because they're pretty boring. They're really interesting to me, but I have all these journals. I stopped writing when I was 22. And I look back and I think maybe, I had 5 years between my family of origin and moving to DC. I met my husband 1 year after undergrad. 5 years. And now I'm 43 and I'm single for the first time. So naturally I'm spending a lot of time in that space. And I think about those 5 years, and I don't have any regrets about my marriage. I adore my ex-husband. I love the life that we built. We have a wonderful relationship. Our kids are incredible, as you know. I can just think back to myself at that point in time. I worked 30 hours a week through undergrad. I went to the financial aid office every week. My parents were not able to help at all. And I was so alone. And I think that I must have met this guy who was this wonderful person who'd been living in Yemen, who had a vision for the future, who was from Vermont. And I think I was like, I am so exhausted. I'm just going to hitch my wagon to yours. Let's just do this together. And I stopped writing in my journal. Isn't that interesting?
It is. And
It makes sense.
It makes sense. It's sad. But you had that experience. You know, I lost myself for a lot longer. But
I mean, hey, this story is not over. I may still be lost.
oh well. Also, you're never done finding it. You know, one of the great things about the journey
Right.
I'm on now is that like every day at this point, I'm discovering something new and fascinating and amazing about life and myself, and the fact that I'm now willing to be uncomfortable, which could become an entire
Big
podcast
statement. Big
episode
statement.
on it
Yeah.
on its own. The fact that I'm now willing to be emotionally uncomfortable and in uncertainty makes me much more able to learn and grow than I ever was. I spent a lot of time being a safe engineer. I was really good at uncertainty analysis. I was really good at risk analysis because I was always looking for what could go wrong. And there's a place in that, you know, in that career. I mean, if you want to get to the very, very highest levels of performance, you got to be obsessive with preventative measures. And I will say that given my own personality, it was both a useful mix and a toxic one for me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so what I've been learning, and it's interesting that you mentioned Emerson, because I mean, you were out of the womb in that. I've discovered transcendentalism, and the spiritual teaching I follow was very, very much influenced by Emerson and that crowd. This is new for me. It's new, but it's not. I mean, I spent a lifetime pushing such thoughts away, and being very, very self-reliant and very, very sciencey, and opening up to the beauty of nature and human beings and discovery and living in non-judgment. This is relatively new in my return. So I can look back, okay, back before I was 5, maybe.
We're returning way back.
Well, it's just that I got off the path early.
Yeah.
Things happened, you know, my parents split when I was 10. My stepfather, who we mentioned, I was 12, you know, and so I started searching for what I did well. And if I didn't do something well natively, I didn't do it. Yeah. Luckily, I had a large number of things I did well. I was a good musician. I was good at math and science, and a capable writer, though I didn't really like it back then, which might be a little odd given the fact that I write so much now. But you know, I learned to only focus on the things that I did well. And if I didn't do something well, I just ignored it. Now, well, I mean, you know, podcasting, I mean, like being in public and speaking, like, oh, that would have just torn me up. And now
it's an ultimate like loss of control, right? In a lot of ways.
And there's a beauty in that. There's so much that's amazing and lovely about life that I would not have access to if I didn't drop that guard.
Well, I want to come back to something you said though. So one of my favorite Emerson essays is called Self-Reliance.
Oh yeah. It's actually part of the teaching.
So there's a quote that I hope you've seen, and it was in my senior year of high school journal. It's all over, and then it's like all over my journals for the year after. And I was just laughing at it the other day thinking, I can't believe this is what spoke to me. But it's up again, old heart, right? It's all about like people bringing you down and you finding it within yourself to talk yourself back up. And then there's something about for the true beauty that the world exists to realize will be the transformation of knowledge into practical power. And I found myself wondering, what was I seeing in that so much in those years when I was journaling in like my early 20s? And it was about my self-reliance and my self-relationship, which was quite strong then, before I lost it, before I let it give way to other relationships, I should say, was all about telling myself that my passion for learning and words and knowledge was going to turn into a practical ability to survive and build my life, right? It makes sense, but it's like there's something so restorative and healing to me about going back to that 17-year-old girl and finding beauty and power in the same words that she did. To the point of this, like, so if you think about self-reliance when you were younger, now I can also see why that piece I wrote about Amelia the other day, my daughter so willingly putting herself on stages and doing things, how parenthood, I was not prepared to watch my kids do things they're not good at.
Yeah.
So often with so much gusto. That's like what she's like, maybe a big part of what she was put into my life to do for me was like get me more comfortable with that, because I'm so inspired by her ability
Yeah.
to self-consciously do that.
That
We
post just like really hit me hard, and I could like feel your feelings, and I could be like just so happy for her.
I should send you, that night she did. Are you familiar with Hamilton, the Broadway show?
A little bit, yeah.
It's like a lot of rapping, right? She did a 4.5 minute essentially rap.
Oh, I want to see that.
It's unreal. It's unreal. And it was like imperfect and ambitious, and the whole room just supported her. And like, there was a bunch of drama kids, they're all singing along, and she felt so high off of that.
Oh,
but yeah.
I love that. I mean, part of me is a little like envious, because if I had one thing I wish I had learned as a child, it would be to be okay with not doing something well.
Yeah. And as an adult, right? I think we need to learn that.
It's an amazing gift. I'm gonna try and help myself get us back on track. You've been doing an amazing job of helping us stay on a track. So writing, and this is the path that you're going on. We have a lot of really rich backstory to that. So in your journey and what you're up to, I'm interested in, what's gone well and what's not gone the way you wanted it to, but maybe that you learned something from.
Okay, so a little context. So I think a lot of people can relate to this. I spent a decade, a formative decade of my career working in a marketing agency. So like a lot of us, I've always been a writer. And before that, I worked for a publishing house, and I did a lot of thought leadership content for the architecture, engineering, construction space. So I was writing. But when I talk about not journaling anymore after 22, it gave way to using those skills for others. And then in marketing and thought leadership work, it gave way to using those skills to give voice for others. So like I might create a strategy for a Fortune 100 company, but really where I became really, really strong was giving a CEO the specific words that they need to explain the strategy and rally people around it. I was very good at connecting like the head and the heart to like an intellectual concept. So by the time that I left my job in 2020 and went out on my own, I knew that the task ahead was going to require me to do something that I hear from my clients all the time. It was really, really uncomfortable and hard for a lot of us because we lose that skill. But like, how do I write my own voice? What is my own voice? So the writing journey that I'm talking about is related to this idea of, and I still do write for other people. I mean, I do personal branding. I have some amazing clients. I love getting their voice. But what I always say to them is what I'm writing for you is your natural voice. I'm hearing it, I'm capturing, I'm rearranging it, and then I'm putting it back in front of you. I'm never making up their voice because you can sense that from a mile away. I'm not interested in that crap. So I'm still doing that, but finding the space to find my own voice. What you have seen is a lot of it's been done in public. My therapist pointed out to me the other day, she read my star chart. I don't know if most therapists read star charts. I have that kind of therapist. I love her. And she was like, a lot of people you have an above average desire to examine and understand your life as you're experiencing it. Not everyone's an examiner. It's very Emersonian. The unexamined life is not worth living. Yeah. But you also have an above average need and desire to share what you're learning. And so this need to like do it in public and to say, much like you, like, I don't want to just like put it in my journal. I actually want to explain it to people, because when you find the exact right words to explain like the complexities, one of the essays I've written, It's Okay to Wish for Death.
I was going to bring that up.
It's excruciating to me when people misunderstand me. And there's a bit of a control thing, to go back to discomfort. A comfort zone for me is having control of the narrative and being able to explain things. And so a lot of my writing, it's such a different sort of skill set and mindset to create the space to hear your voice, to give it room to emerge, to discover what's there. And my journey has been doing the business piece, but also creating space to do the personal piece and kind of just see and do it out in public and do it kind of in plain sight. And a lot of writing on LinkedIn actually has been a really gratifying place to toy with things, pilot things like the Amelia story we were talking about, just little things that I write on a whim where I'm not too precious about it. And you start to hear something and then it all starts to stack up. And all of a sudden one day you might look and say, I think I've actually got component pieces of a bigger piece here.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the path I've been on more recently. I know we're going to run out of time, so I'll be quick here. Is my dad died in 2016, January 16. My mom died in April of 22. They weren't together. I was 14 when they separated. But when my mom died, I found myself in a really prolific space of processing and able to process both of those deaths, which I think is common for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That was such a productive experience that therapist recommended. I said, I have so much to say and such a creative desire to get back to writing. And I want to write about this because now I'm finally on the other side of it. Like I'm in a safe place. They're no longer alive. I can really examine this. That's why I did The Artist's Way in January of 23 on her recommendation. And the exercises in that book were what allowed me methodically to come back to myself, to clear the junk out of my brain and to start writing. That's what got me on the path. And then I think, as you know, I took a sabbatical. I made a 6-part audio documentary that I wrote with the help of interviewing a lot of people in my life. And then after that, I found myself really inspired. But here's the last piece of the writing journey. This is my twist. I haven't been able to write this year. So I wrote like 8 essays last fall in quick succession. Loved them. Some of the best stuff I've ever written. And then all of a sudden around February this year, I just like went silent. And I'm able to journal to myself. But I think I'm so much in the thick of living right now. I'm in such a massive transformation. I'm going to end this year living in a different home, single, and began this year married in this home. And I need to give some space for that 20-year relationship to end, which it has, and to just not rush it. So the lesson I'm learning on this writing journey, it's not done. I have so much more I'd like to write, is that I can't push it right now. And that's a really hard thing for me.
Oh, you're that's just hitting on more topics than I can possibly, align with. But I'm loving this, and we'll be a little bit flexible about time. But so many things that you're hitting on. Gosh, almost like we can't pick them all, but I'm going to pick up on several of them. One of them is that the idea of being misunderstood, or having your writing bring up something other. I'm gonna put words in your mouth. Having your writing bring up something other than what you intended it to bring up.
That's a tough one. That happens.
You did The Artist's Way. You're familiar with art.
It's in the eye of the beholder.
and is there something wrong with somebody getting something even upsetting out of what you've written that wasn't what you intended it? And if so,
Yeah, no, I don't think there is. I think it's a false idea that we are in control of the narrative. And I have a fairly sizable following now on LinkedIn. And so it's easy for me to think that I do have control. But again, this person that I've been seeing lately has consumed a lot of the stuff I've written and some of my podcasts. And it's been really interesting because it's more of a one-on-one dialogue that's very different from like the interactions I'm having with a lot of people on LinkedIn whom I reach out just to say, hey, it made me think about my dad who died. And I love that. Like I'm putting it out there because I want to connect with people. But I do find it very interesting because some of the stuff that this person will come back and say, I'm like, oh, that's not at all what I intended. And then I get kind of mad. So it's a good exercise that I think I'm still beginning to explore.
Well, and I put that out there in part because I relate. I one of the things I'm trying to do with my writing is I have like just drive, this calling. This is not coming from me. Desire to put out things that will help people heal and find themselves and find their
and you don't place. Know what they're going to find in it.
And I can get attached to what will occur as a result. And if it doesn't, I just even had something happen last night where a beautiful conversation I had with somebody who posted about the conversation, and made some comment about that, good won't come in my lifetime. And my literal comment was, I know good will come but I'm not attached to it happening in my lifetime. And I got a little tweaked about those words. And meanwhile, it's just somebody's take, some beautiful take on what I had said. But meanwhile, it's like, and like,
that's not what I intended.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and I've had now several conversations this week about people reacting to being, misunderstood, for example,
Oh, really
misinterpreted. And
interesting.
I think it's an interesting thought for me. I mean, I'm taking it all self-reflection. It's like, my thought for me is like, okay, why does this matter to me? Why is that important? Why was it important for me enough to like write a comment with a clarifying statement in it? Because then I felt kind of like, oh gosh, should I have done that? And then I like rewrote the comment.
Yeah.
Which is all more of the same thing, which is my attachment, which we talked about before we even started recording today, that I have an attachment to how I'm perceived. I mean, that becomes a whole other story, because I have an idea of why.
Yeah.
I was exposed to judgment and condemnation, not necessarily of myself, but of other people in my home, that, from parents that would like treat other people harshly and whatever. And so I ended up, projecting onto the world that the world will do that to me. And even though that's like, it's in my, it's buried. It's not like a conscious thought. But that, then the Jungian work comes out. It's like, now my work at the moment, like at this moment. And one of my reasons for writing is so that I can face the discomfort of being misunderstood and heal my need to be understood. That's like my big lesson this year.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's painful too. Oh my gosh, it's uncomfortable. And I will face that with this podcast. We're going to put it out into the world, and people are going to interpret however they will. And then I'm going to get to just
part of the beauty of it, right?
Well, and it's always easy to say the beauty when it's someone else's experience. Meanwhile, I'm quite sad to see that the clock is where it is at the moment, because I am so enjoying this conversation. I will proactively say that I will have you back anytime you're willing, for chat or podcast, either way. Meanwhile, I think we've covered enough ground for now. How would people reach you if they want to find out about you and your work?
So you already mentioned my company is Captivating Consulting. The website's just captivatingco.com. There's a lot on there. I keep a lot of content, a lot of free tools, lots of information about my work. And then, as you know, I'm extremely active on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn handle, I guess, is just Catlin O, CATLINO. And those are the two best places to connect with me. I'm extremely connectable.
Well, wonderful. It's been really great to have you. I'm so much appreciative of that. Again, I'm Robert Haines. This is Engineering Your Life podcast design review. Kat, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. That was awesome.